Hi, I'm Nate from Practical Garden Ponds. We've been talking about which pump to use in your pond, and really we haven't answered the biggest question, and that's how to size the pump for your ponds. Today, we're just going to talk about that without any brand-specific information at all. So if you're looking for information on how to size the pump for your pond, let's get practical. So today we're going to talk about sizing a pump for the pond. The first thing you need to know is the size of your pond. A lot of people don't know. Of course, the accurate way to know the size of the pond would be to start with an empty pond, put a water meter on your hose, meter the water into your pond, and you'll get the exact gallon size of your pond. That would be great. But since most people don't have what they need to do that, we have come up with ways of estimating the size of the pond. It's as simple for you as this. In your mind, make your pond into a basic rectangle. So if there's little points that stick out, bring them in a little. But as you're measuring the size of your pond, try and picture it as a basic rectangle. Then simply take the width times the length times the average depth times 7.48. And the number you get is the approximate gallonage of your pond. The better you do at estimating those different lengths and sizes of your pond, if it were a true rectangle, the closer that number will be. So now you've got the size of your pond. You know that you have, let's just say, for example, a 1,200 gallon pond. So the question is, what size pump do you need for a 1,200 gallon pond? Well, first of all, we would recommend the more turnover of the pond, the better. I say that because I'm going to give some rules of thumb, but the truth is that in nature, the waterfalls and water features that you see have a tremendous water volume over them. So we're trying to duplicate nature in artificial ponds. So first things first, I recommend a bare minimum of turning that pond over at least once an hour. The larger the pond, the less water flow is needed to keep that pond healthy. But in small ponds, really once an hour is not enough. And so I would recommend twice an hour is what I'd really recommend. Again, once an hour is the bare minimum. Twice an hour, turning your pond over, is what we'd shoot for, except in really, really large ponds. So in our 1,200 gallon pond example, we'd be looking for a pond pump that's going to produce about 2,400 gallons an hour flow rate in your particular pond. Okay, so what are the differences that make a pump perform differently in different ponds? Well, the first thing that we generally talk about is head height. So if you hear a pond guy say how much head or how much head height is in your pond, what they mean is a figure that you get by combining three different figures together. Your first figure is the height from the water level in your pond to the highest place that you're going to pump water. So if you're going to pump water to a waterfall that's 4 foot above the water level of your pond, that's your first number, 4 foot. But if your tubing or if your piping somehow goes up higher and then comes down to that waterfall, the highest point that tubing goes, that's your head height figure, your first figure to get head height. The second figure you want is a total linear length, the total length of the tubing that you're running. Approximately every 10 feet of lateral tubing equals 1 foot of head height. So the second figure you want is take that total number of tubing, let's say 30 feet, and that gives you a 3 to add to your original 4. The last number is a number that we add simply for the complicated things in your water's path. So if you've got sharp elbows, 90-degree elbows, a UV light they're going through, a complicated filter, all of these things take pressure. We usually figure a foot of head pressure for each one of those complicated bends and twists. Now let's just say you have 3 elbows and a UV light, so we're going to add another 4 feet. Your total head height for this fictitious pond is now 11 feet of head. All right, so now we've got our head height. So we're looking for a pump to turn this pond over twice every hour. It's a pretty small pond, 1,200 gallon pond, so we definitely want to turn it over at least twice. More would be even better. So we're looking for a pump that's going to produce 2,400 gallons per hour at 11 foot of head height for this fictitious pond. Now there's also some other things we have to figure. First of all, we have to calculate the minimum for this pond. We've done that already in terms of the pond size, but there could be other things creating a minimum for this pond as well. And so, for example, you might have a desire to have a 36-inch waterfall at the top of this pond. Now that would be an awfully big waterfall for a 1,200 gallon pond, but I'm just trying to make an example. All of a sudden, the width of the waterfall you want totally changes the minimum gallons per hour for this pond. All of a sudden, you need a pump that's going to look good at a 36-inch wide waterfall. We usually figure about 200 gallons per hour per inch of waterfall width. So for a 36-inch waterfall, we're talking a 7,000 gallon an hour pump. Now again, that's an awfully big waterfall for a 1,200 gallon pond. I wouldn't do that. But I'm just trying to give you an example of other ways that you can calculate the minimum pump size for your pond. And that has to do with the water feature that you want to create, the waterfall or other water feature that you want to create. Now let's also talk about the maximum pump size for your pond, because yes, your pond does have a maximum size. Of course, the higher and wider your waterfall, the more important it is that the splash created by that waterfall remains in the pond. So if your pond is small, keep the waterfall relatively small. The other types of things that might create a maximum for your pond is the equipment itself. Your UV light, your filter. Each of these pieces of equipment has a manufacturer's flow recommendation. It's extremely important, especially on some of the inexpensive light-duty filters on the market. Or if you want your UV lights to be effective, to actually do their job, it's extremely important to follow the manufacturer's recommendations. So look at all of your equipment. The equipment with the lowest maximum flow rate is the maximum flow rate of your entire pond. All right, so I think we've talked about how to figure out the size of your pond. We've talked about how to figure out what pump size you need to rotate that water through your filtration system frequently enough in that pond. We've talked about how to calculate the minimum for the pond and how to calculate the maximum for the pond. So again, now you are just trying to make sure that all of that will create the appearance that you want. Again, that goes back to, if it's a waterfall, about 150 to 200 gallons per hour per inch of waterfall width for good, impressive looking flow. If you want that flow to be a trickle, obviously you need to make those numbers lower. If you want that flow to be a roar, obviously you need to make those numbers higher. That 150 to 200 gallons per hour per inch is for a typical, what we call a typical flow. Well, I hope that's been helpful information, and of course we'd be more than happy, as would any good dealer, to help you design your pond and to help you work through all of these calculations for your specific pond. So don't hesitate to give me a call or shoot me an email at nate@practicalgardenponds.com or 484-356-5351. I'm Nate at Practical Garden Ponds, and I hope you'll like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel and check us out at practicalgardenponds.com. In the meantime, we look forward to hearing from you, what reviews you would like us to do, and we look forward to serving you. So have a great day, and thanks for watching.